we've categorized ourselves into 6 kind of sectors, if you want to call it that, okay? Printing and packaging is one. The traditional family business, the one that my grandfather started, which is hardware and building materials, okay, that's another one. We do anything related to the office, so office supplies, equipment, everything from a paper clip to a large server farm, okay? So that's the office supplies and stationery side. We have a general manufacturing side, so stuff that we're generally good at selling in the hardware and building material side. We sort of we integrated backwards, okay, and started cable manufacturing, tanks, pipes, that kind of stuff. So we call that manufacturing because there's no anything in specific. And then we have the services side. So the services side is where travel and finance and those kind of organizations sit. Also the things that we are centralizing, rather than like I mentioned, rather than keep it as an overhead at head office, we prefer to turn them into a P&L company that has to fight for business. And so if it's relevant and able to fight for that business, then it will be relevant in our organization. And so that's a growing sector, the services side, okay? And then the last is the real estate side. So we own a lot of the real estate that we operate in. In some cases, the company that owns the real estate is not necessarily the company that's renting it, even though they're both our companies, okay? And then we also have, apartment blocks, and we also have a shopping mall. So those are sort of different real estate projects that fall under the group, okay? And we're also busy trying to restructure that and looking at that in a very careful way, because that kind of ties into this whole family business thing. So a family business would look at real estate as a long-term play, right? We see real estate being a disadvantage right now when it comes to the costing of the product. So we would rather, as a family, strip the real estate to the family side of the business and let the organization pay rent and remain cost effective. But we will develop that real estate to make that organization a bit more competitive. And that's an example of where we see in the future family businesses that maybe not think like this may find themselves in a bit of trouble. And we get it, why you'd want real estate in your manufacturing business, because of the security of it, okay? Plus, real estate grows in these markets, right, value-wise. So we can do that, okay? But we're now starting to compete with organizations that don't have that mentality, right? So we need to remain in that space, and having real estate actually sometimes is a disadvantage than renting. So the rental model here is cheaper than the ownership model. So yeah, that's another example of where we see things slightly differently. So our group has at its strength its size, okay? And what I mean by that is not so much how many people we employ or what the turnovers are, but it's got an advantage in that when we do a strategy like real estate, we have the ability and the finance to strip off assets, okay? Because that has a huge cash flow implication, okay? And similarly, in organizations where, we are in a slightly turbulent environment when it comes to legislative processes and things like that. So, the plastic ban is a great example of a legislative directive that pretty much wiped out 40 to 45% of one of our businesses' turnover. There are not many businesses that can take that kind of a hit unless they're supported by other organizations. And in our case, it was other organizations within the group that could provide short-term cash flow or could provide ability to shift the manufacturing model to a different segment altogether, either through acquisition or just bringing in new machinery, okay? So that kind of ability for us to quickly restructure, I think is one of our strengths. In that particular example, a lot of our competitors who are family-owned businesses, some of them had to eventually just shut down. whereas we're still running. So that's you know, and then of course whatever comes with larger groups, you know, better systems, ability to own professionals that we can split the cost across multiple organizations. A single unit would never be able to afford some of those services or human resources, right? And how are we leveraging off that? You know, IT is a great example. I mean, we run IT systems that no one company would ever be able to afford, but we see the competitive advantages that some of these systems bring in, and because you know, because we're so many organizations, even an organization like Sador would look at us not as a small client, would look at us as a massive client, even though each individual company may not be as big. But then it brings a lot of advantages to us. We then often get visibility on new technologies, newer directions that, you know, technology companies are taking their products, just so that we prep ourselves ahead of time for what's coming. That's another advantage which I don't see other smaller businesses having.